Hello everyone and welcome to another video. Today we are back in Warframe to have a look at Sirius Orion, how you can acquire them, how to build them, and discuss about some major issues they have, because there is plenty of those. Sirius and Orion have been a very weird duo to play as, and it all comes down to the fact that their abilities are straight up either useless or just way too gimmicky, but there is some hope because the EE is making changes to their kit and is fixing some of the bugs that are afflicting these warframes, so hopefully in the future we'll get some very serious buffs. Or I don't know what's gonna happen. But for now, let's see how you can acquire them. First of all, you have to complete the quest called Jade Shadow Constellations. If you don't finish this quest, you won't be able to access the game mode that allows you to farm for their parts, so the only way to get the Warframe will be from the market for some platinum. So after finishing the quest, you can go to your Railjack missions and go to Uranus Proxima, and here you can select the two newly added game modes of Tukuva Witch and Scoria's Angel, where you can fight respectively Vina and Ryoku, and by completing each of these you have a chance to get the parts. And unlike Equinox, for example, you only need one of each part, so one your updates, one systems, and one chassis, and you don't need to farm both of those for both Warframes, you just need one, which is really good. And if you are very unlucky and you don't get the Warframe parts as a drop from the game modes, you can buy them from Hanhao at Ponti's Tower with the tokens you get from completing each of these two quests. And now that you know how to get them, let's talk about their abilities. So first of all, these two kind of mess with each other all the time, and their passive kind of shows this because whenever your active sibling has less than 50 energy, it will start stealing energy from the other one, which is very funny. And on top of that, they have the other part of the passive, which is 45% ability efficiency for 2 ability casts when swapping between them. So you swap to your other sibling and you cast 2 abilities, they have 45% ability efficiency, and then you repeat. And you have this active all the time. To swap between the two, you have to either hold your 1, your 2, or your 3, till you see the other sibling just come in and absolutely kick the other one out of the way, which is very funny. And you also get a couple of frames of invincibility while you do that. And each of them has their own set of abilities, and you can mod each of them separately in your modding screen. And then there is the meter on the bottom right of your screen, and this is your constellation that you will charge by casting abilities, and it is the thing you need to cast your 4th ability. As long as you have any of the stars charged in there, you can then cast your 4th ability. You can only charge 2 stars per sibling, so let's say I wanna get more of the blue stars, I cannot. Right now I have to swap to my other sibling, and then I can charge 2 more, and you have to repeat this all the time to then charge your 7 stars. Moving on, let's talk about Sirius skills, and then let's move on to Orion. Okay, so Sirius' first ability is called Coronal Ejection, and when you cast it, you will summon this sight that will travel in a straight line and then come back to you, and it deals damage on the path forward, and when it comes back, it collects all the loot from the ground. The damage of the skill is fine, but it's not really enough to be a main source of damage, so you can just use it to charge your constellations, and that's it. Then we have his second skill called Jade Stars, and by casting it, you will summon the 7 motes that will attack enemies every time you deal damage to them. The ability has a certain duration, and during this entire duration, it will keep on spawning new motes that you can use to attack enemies. The sad thing is that they deal pretty much no damage, and they are very, very slow on spawning anyway, even after the changes. So it's kind of a whatever ability, but the cool thing is that at least whenever you swap to Orion, you keep this ability active. Then we have the third ability called Light Sanctuary, and this is, in my opinion, one of the most disappointing abilities in the game. And the reason why I think this is not because it's like bad in and of itself, like the healing is good and the damage reduction is also pretty good. The issue is that the moment you leave the circle that this ability makes, you lose all the buffs. There's no like you keep them for a certain duration, nothing, you just lose them, and you have to recast the ability, which is a bit excessive in my opinion, especially in Warframe, but that's just how it works. So you either keep on spamming this ability whenever you're moving around the map, or you pretty much don't have any damage reduction nor any healing. And on top of that, you also have to wait for the ability to reach its maximum size, which means even more waiting. So yeah, it's not really easy to use this in like, let's say an Exterminate, which is just very difficult unless you're playing max range. So it's basically like having a Worst Trinity's Blessing, because you don't get any shields back, with the addition of a possible revive every 60 seconds. That's pretty much it. And finally, we have the fourth ability called Celestial Clash that is shared between both siblings, so I will only mention it here, and it's gonna be the same for Orion. As I said before, this ability requires you to have that constellation meter filled at least a little bit, and after doing that you can start using the ability and performing the special attacks. When you cast ability, you enter this fly mode and a new reticle will appear on your screen with like a triangle and a semicircle, and by pressing right and left click and matching the position of those two symbols, you gain more crit chance on the ability, and that means you will also be dealing more damage. And if you manage to match all the 7 inputs, you also deal a special attack at the end that deals additional damage. Now, the ability sounds and looks really good until you stop and think of how expensive it is, because you need 7 ability casts to charge the correct way to deal the most amount of damage, which means that just by spamming your 1 and like alternating between the two twins, you are looking at about 60 energy already just to charge it. And then on top of that, you have to add another 100 base efficiency energy, which brings us at 160 energy just to use the ability, which is insane. And on top of that, you will also be locked into the specific animation of you flying, which is alright, but the issue with moving around a lot is that your Light Sanctuary is actually really just useless at this point, because, well, if you move around too much, you will get out of the Sanctuary, and that means you lose the buffs, which is... it just doesn't make that much sense. On the good side though, this ability has 72.8 meters of range, which, like, at max range is pretty cool. You can use it for some funny nukes, but it doesn't really deal that much damage, even at like 300% ability strength. You're only looking like at a few millions in like that range, which may sound like a lot, but it's really not in Warframe standards, especially in like endgame. And on top of all of this, Celestial Clash, even though it has 73 almost meters of range, it has line of sight. So any obstacle, any wall, anything in between you and the enemy will prevent this ability from dealing damage. So even though you may deal millions of damage, it may not reach the enemy because there is like a small particle of something in between you and the enemy. Yeah, it's not the greatest thing ever. In comparison, Dante only needs to cast his third ability 2 times, plus his fourth ability to have access to his nuke, and all of that costs 100 energy and doesn't lock you out of anything else. So it's a bit weird. Alright, moving to Orion, his first ability is probably the best ability of their whole kit, which is weird, but this ability is actually pretty good. You will strip enemies of their armor and their shields in a huge cone in front of you, and also deal some quite solid damage that you can use for like actually dealing damage to enemies. So overall, pretty solid ability, pretty solid first ability, and I think you should just use this at all times. It is very, very good. Then we have the second ability called Astral Shell, and this gives Orion and Sirius this barrier that can block 1 instance of damage every 5 seconds, and after you take damage you will then summon a clone that after a certain duration will explode and deal some very, very minor damage to enemies in that very small radius. So it's useless, but at least you're blocking 1 shot every 5 seconds, and this ability lasts 44 seconds, so it's not too bad, but it's just a much worse Revenant's Mesmer skin. So yeah, alright, I mean it's not terrible, but it's not great either. And finally, since we're not going to talk about the fourth ability again, we have the third ability called Event Horizon. And honestly, this was the ability I was excited about, but it's really not that good. By casting this ability, you lob a freaking black hole at your enemies, and this black hole then starts collecting them like they are dust around the house that you're just vacuuming, which is very funny. And then the black hole starts like moving around the map and bouncing on walls, roofs and whatnot, and just going in random directions, while carrying all the enemies it's trapping with it. You can also use either Gravitic Slash, or you can also use Coronal Ejection to ping-pong on this black hole. So by using Coronal Ejection on the black hole, you pull it towards you, and by using Gravitic Slash, you will then pong it the other way, which is interesting. But this ability, just like Life Sanctuary, doesn't really make that much sense, because whenever you're using a grouping ability, you want that blob of enemies to just stay in one spot that you can easily reach and take care of, while this very bouncy black hole will make that a nightmare. And the other issue is that it deals absolutely no damage at all. If you see that like damage on the tab here, that's actually the damage it deals at the end of its duration. So this thing will just move around, dealing no damage, letting enemies, making it harder for you to reach those enemies. At least you're just spamming your one as well to keep the black hole in one spot. So it's like a lot of work just for a grouping ability, which shouldn't be the point of a grouping ability. And on top of that, by you casting your first ability, you're also increasing the duration of your black hole, so it's never gonna explode, and it's never gonna deal damage unless you recast the ability. So yeah, I don't really understand like why this ability is like this, and not just a grouping ability that looks cool because it's a black hole. So yeah, it's just way too much work for a very, very bad grouping ability, and I don't know why that's the case. Let's now have a look at the builds, and for them I am using pretty much the same build, but like for Archon Shards at least, I focused on more strength, some more max energy, regenerating shields with blast damage, since their ultimate deals blast damage, and we have no way of restoring shields. This will help us survive a little bit longer. And also some casting speed, but you don't wanna go crazy on the casting speed, because otherwise your fourth ability may bug and it won't work anymore, which I'm sure the E will fix, but right now just be careful. If you have too much casting speed, your fourth ability will just not work anymore. Okay, so this is the build for Sirius, and it is pretty much max range with a bunch of power strength. You also wanna have a lot of power strength on your fourth ability, because that's pretty much what we're gonna use for everything. This is just going to be the ability we use. Everything else is just there for us to charge our fourth ability. So we're just focusing on the damage from here and maximizing that as much as possible. And we are also using Blind Rage and Transient Fortitude for even more power strength. On top of that, we also have max range, 280%, and also Prime Flow for more energy max, and also Prime Continuity to counter the effects of Transient Fortitude. I don't really care about efficiency because we gained that 45% from the passive, which is very nice, so we are sitting at 90%, it's not actually 45. Now for the Arcanes, I'm using Moto Augmented for even more power strength, and Arcane Steadfast, so even if we run into some energy issues, which we shouldn't, we have this one that will make it so we have free ability casts every once in a while, so it will help us with our energy economy. And then for Orion is pretty much the same build, because once again, we do need range, strength, and some duration, so it's just the same build. And if you haven't guessed yet, I am cosplaying as Dante and Virgil, so my weapons are just gonna be Ebony and Ivory, which is actually the dual Toxicist in Canon, and this is the build I am using, and the Yamato, which is actually the Siam, and that is with this build. You can use whatever weapons you want. I just wanted to, you know, finish the cosplay, so there we go. Then for the focus school, I am using Madurai, and that is to gain an additional 40% power strength and 50% casting speed, which is nice to have. And once again, that is probably the most amount of casting speed you can get on these two right now, because otherwise it will just bug their animations, so keep that in mind. As for your companion, use whatever you prefer. I will probably just use my Panzerupa Phyla in the actual mission showcase. Alright, that was a very long and depressing explanation, so let's now see how they deal with some enemies, shall we? And as always, I'll be testing against 20 Corrupted Heavy Gunners, level 235, with Steel Path modifiers. Alright, let's get some energy first, because we kind of need that. Let's also get the Madurai buffs, and what you want to do is just cast whatever ability to charge your constellations. Make sure to use the first ability, Gravitic Slash, because it will remove armor and shield from enemies, so we deal more damage. And yeah, just keep swapping between the twins every two abilities to charge all those constellations. And now let's go into a fourth ability, and you now see the semicircle and the triangle. The triangle, I have to press right click or whatever your input button is on your like console or whatever. So this will give me more critical chance, and the more I do it, the more crit chance I get. And like you can see, the damage is solid. Like that is absolutely solid damage. You can like leave mid fourth ability with your Tenno to preserve charges if you somehow want to. But the issue is that if we don't strip enemies of their armor, our damage is not that good. The damage, like, we're dealing more damage because crit chance is going up. But even then, like, this is not the big of a damage thing, and like you cannot really use Gravitic Slash to shape enemy's armor while being in your fourth ability, so you're stuck with that damage. And there is no way of you like being able to cast ability while being in your 4, so you either want to finish the combo or just deactivate it, and this will also preserve the stars you have. So there's that. And I feel like the whole point of this Warframe is just charge your constellations, use your fourth ability, and repeat. And even then, like, the damage output is not that big to like make this reasonable. It's not like my fourth ability is deleting whole maps every time I use it. It's very average, so it's not justifying the gimmickness of their kit. And like, funny enough, whenever I was testing the build, I had my companion deal more damage and kill more enemies than me. Like, my little fox companion was dealing more damage than my 2 Warframes, which is disappointing. And considering how strong Jade is, like, canonically, and how Stalker is basically the coolest character in the game, I was expecting something better from their kids. You know, it's weird. Like, I feel like DE needs to really stop and work on them a bit more and deliver a better experience, because although it is cool, it's very visually cool, it's not really that good. Like, I don't think this Warframe will be used at all in the future, because it just has nothing to offer. And yeah, that is Sirius and Orion. Once again, a very, very huge disappointment from DE, but I have hope that they will work more on them in the future and fix the bugs, and hopefully give us a very cool duo of Warframes. In the meantime, I recommend you don't waste any Forma on them, because they require Forma per Warframe, so it's gonna be a lot of Forma. So if you don't want to waste a lot of them, don't, just level them up, get the mastery out of them, and like, if you enjoy their gameplay, great, I love that for you. Overall, I give them a very flashy Warframe out of 10, but it lacks any kind of synergy. And now I will leave you guys to the showcase, where I test these 2 for only 5 minutes, because I'm not doing 10 for them. This is the only exception I'm making in the history of my channel. I'm not playing 10 minutes of them, I actually cannot, I don't enjoy that. So it's gonna be only 5 minutes of Silpa's Grenier Survival, where you can see how they perform in a more realistic scenario. If you enjoyed the video, remember to leave a like, and if you like my content, consider subscribing. I wish you a beautiful rest of the day, thanks for watching, and bye-bye.